Hey everyone, and welcome back to another update video for Elysian Eclipse. There have been 2 new patron releases since my last video, which means I've got a lot of new things to cover, and especially 2 exciting new sandboxes, the building grid and the solar system. Now, since we have a lot to cover, I'll be starting out small and knocking out the minor additions and changes, and then working our way up to the bigger stuff. So first of all, you may have already noticed the splash text, also try adapt, which is a very nice touch. As you might have already guessed, every time you load up the main menu, a new splash text appears. The functionality of the Elysian Archive has also been improved, where creations can now be deleted, as well as the archive recognizing corrupted creations and invalid items. And also, if I select a category, we can now create new straight from the archive. Additionally, if I were to open up an existing creation, such as this Charizard here, we now have the option to export 3D model, which will open up a dialog to confirm that I have saved it to my desktop. And so if I were to open a program like Blender and try to import a .glb file from my desktop, you can see we actually have my Charizard here in Blender, which also includes all color information as well, which is already more than I could ask from Spore. I don't have Maya, so I've never had access to the colors in Spore's export functionality, so it's really cool to see that this is already doable here, and it can also be exported to an STL for 3D printing, which is a really cool touch. Now back to the game. If I were to open one of these in the editor itself, using the arrow keys, we now have the option to move the creature around, and this is a very lovely solution for when, say you were to build a creature in the wrong place, you kind of couldn't move everything, so this is a very nice and elegant solution. You may have noticed that the texture of the floor panel has also been updated, it's looking just much nicer in general. We can also randomize the name of our creatures as well, which gives that a nice kind of spore-like feel to it. And also, you might have noticed on the top right here, everything is now categorized, and I must say I really love this, my favorite feature for the creature and cell editors so far. So if we select info and mouse over the various parts, we'll see the DNA budget, the title and description, and in some cases the stats as well, which is really cool. If I select a part and go into morph, it has all the same functionality as before, but now in a more just tidy location. Say I were to add another piece as well, such as one of the sensory organs. Again, just more options in general. And paint is here too. If I would select the main body, we've got all the patterns, the textures, the tiling, some preset colors as well. And it's just looking really good. It just looks visually much better than before. And I wanted to take a quick moment here to compare the progress so far to that of the very first release of Elysian Eclipse from 0.1.1. And just look at how bare the editor is by comparison. I know it's Creature and Cell, but currently Creature and Cell have all the same tabs and abilities and items and features. And yet, just look at how bare this looks by comparison. There's so many missing parts, the entire menu at the bottom is gone, and whenever I do actually have a part selected, the overall configuration is just very light as well. Compared to the state of the current game, where there's just so much more going on, it's just prettier, it's nicer. Again, big fan of the categories on the upper right hand corner, because now you're no longer met with just a giant scrolling dialogue of sliders and buttons and such. Now new people can actually understand what's going on, and it's going to be just a much better thing. Now then, back to the main menu screen. Some of you might have noticed a fancy new button, and that is the Medieval Stage Start Sandbox, which will bring us down here to this lovely looking building. Now then, if I click the building, a little blob spawns, which I can control, I can move around, and I can tell it to equip these weapons. Let's deselect, grab you, get the sword, spawn another one, get the staff. And as you can see, we have 3 terribly deadly weapon-wielding blobs. Let's go ahead then and move you guys all the way up here to find a trio of nuggets. So here we are then, the blobs versus the nuggets, and I want to show you that these weapons aren't just for show. If I go ahead and grab my sword-wielding one, it actually has a frontal cone, and it actually does damage. It's got a health bar and everything. The archer, if I move you to the side slightly, or maybe up here, and attack you, is actually got projectiles which do certain amounts of damage. And then if I select our staff-wielding one, it'll throw fireballs. Isn't that just so cool? We've already got like our first sort of basic RTS kind of system going on. You can actually control multiple units like in a travel stage and get them to equip weapons and actually attack with varying attacks. Now, if you're wondering about the nugget creatures themselves, yes, they are indeed inspired by the bean in Spore. But the caveat being that these guys are diabolical, they know what they've done, they are evil, and do not question it at all, they deserve the wrath of a blob. Now, as the name implies, this is the building grid demo. If I select one of the buildings on the top left-hand corner, there is indeed a building grid to put down more buildings. And clicking on these buildings will spawn more blobs. Now, what's really cool, by the way, is that I have spent some time spamming hundreds and hundreds of blobs, and I can tell you that performance-wise, it's actually pretty good. The game will lag out when, you know, creating additional blobs, additional units in general, which is kind of understandable. But once they have been spawned in, yeah, performance-wise, it's actually pretty good. And the pathing is so much better than Spore. I mean, really, you just can't do this in Spore. Like, even in a treble stage, heaven forbid you have like too many units trying to put food in the basket and they get stuck in each other and, you know, cause a big queue and it's nothing happens. The AI so far has actually been pretty decent. I've given it a bit of a thorough test in the past and I was honestly really happy with it. And it's just really cool to see, like, we have this here already and I'm really excited to see. And even though it is just a demo at the end of the day, is it really just a test to create the base functions for a future, you know, building grid requiring systems, such as a nest editor, for example. I'm excited to see just what more Wasmans does with this and how he expands upon this idea. But while this was the final addition from patch 0.1.5, this isn't even a final thing to show you in this video. Let's move on to patch 0.1.6. Please add the Spore for mobile for free. What even is that? I've got the feeling it's been getting a lot of poorly worded requests. But anyway, for the final feature, if I scroll down on the left-hand side of the space stage and start the sandbox for the space stage, we are met with the randomized procedural solar system generation. Look at that. So, we're in solar system Utoku the Third. And if I mouse over the star, you can see it is a Class C regular star with a temperature of 7,000 Kelvin, I assume, with a total of 2 satellites. Those satellites being a barren planet and another barren planet. If I hit the randomize, we will indeed get different variations. Here we've got a Class E regular star with a volcanic planet, a Class F dwarf star with a volcanic barren ice giant, and another barren. It's really liking the barrens right now. We've got an irradiated planet in this supergiant Class A star system, along with another frozen planet hiding in the back over there. Oh, doesn't that look really cool as well? You can actually zoom in, and might I say, I also just really like how the light reflects on the planets. Like, the planets themselves look really, really nice. I just love the texture. I love the lighting, the shading, just how it all actually, you know, works. Oh, look at this lime-coloured gas giant. That's a crazy looking one. Ujashir. Got a gas giant over here with a couple of rings as well. Ruroro. In addition to a lush planet over here, just looking, well, lush indeed. I also just really like the membrane material from the cell editor. Just here for the water. It just makes it just feel a bit more 3D. Like, it just, this little angle right here with the, like, with the bloom effect, or the lens flare, whatever you want to call it. Light shafts, and just the reflecting light, the shadows, the water ring, whatchamacallit, it just looked really, really nice, and it just already feels just more 3D, just slightly more HD than that of Spore. It's great, I love it. Also, you might have noticed that the background changes colour as well. Wow, look at that irradiated planet, that one looks funky. It's really, really cool, man. I'm so excited for this. Now, unfortunately, you can't actually do anything with this just yet, but it's a fact that he's actually got a randomized feature working in the first place, which is really, really cool. And you are most likely wondering, okay, well, does this even matter? Does, like, the temperature and the star types matter? Yes, they do. The variant host stars will affect the climate and resources on satellite planets, meaning that the accompanying planets of this star will, you know, their resources will be dependent on the star type. So perhaps you might find like a rare resource in a supergiant system or something, or perhaps not a barren planet with a dead or dwarf star system. Or in fact, right here, this Class F dwarf star system confirms that theory, because we've got 2 desert planets in the inner rings, we've got 2 barren planets in the middle rings, we've got a gas giant and an ice giant in the outer rings as well. So that's a really nice touch, and it actually does, like, already, it does matter. Now, you're probably wondering, The player, oh, that's a really cool Hypergiant, Class S Hyper, that is big and pink. Anyway, the player will always begin in a Type C or Type D star system, which is the equivalent of a G and a K in the Harvard spectral classification. So while you will always begin in a Class C or D system, you do still have the opportunity to choose your planet type when you're creating your game, and will thus feel a temperature range in the creature stage and probably other stages too, which can be changed via parts and parts upgrades. I don't believe that Wasman's the kind of person to, you know, make ambitious promises. I think he actually will try and add in all these features that he's suggesting, such as the whole temperature regulation thing and adjusting your creature's comfort to certain temperature ranges. I think he will try to add that in, but again, just keep in mind, this is all very much early access. Well, I wouldn't even call it early access. This is still so heavily in development that just be prepared in case things may potentially change down the line. However, thus far it does sound incredibly exciting. Hey look, we got Ship, the irradiated planet. I like it, just Ship. And if in case you're wondering, it has already been confirmed that you can play in frozen planets. That, I imagine, it also includes other planets like deserts, volcanic, lush, etc. as well. I'd be surprised if you could play on like an ice giant or a gas giant. You probably can't. But yeah, you'll definitely have the option to choose between the base planets you actually play on. And otherwise, that about does it for today. There's quite a lot of new things to cover and I'm really excited. So some of the more skeptical among you are probably thinking, well, there's no actual gameplay yet, and you're totally fair to think that. There isn't really any gameplay yet, because Wasman's is busy making the base functions and systems. You can't have a playable galaxy without a way to generate the star systems. You can't have a playable creature stage without a way to generate the actual animations of the creatures, and so forth. It is so important that these, you know, base functions, these sandboxes get created first, because these will become the individual bones of the skeleton that will then get fleshed out into a, you know, fully fleshed game. Bit of a weird metaphor, but you understand what I'm saying. And personally, I still continue to be incredibly excited. I'm so hopeful for this, and it's just looking better and better with every patch thus far. Speaking of patches, we are on 0.1.6. I believe the next release is actually 0.2. So it might be a big one, not entirely sure, don't hold me on that. But regardless, very excited. And as always, if you want to support Wasman's or be the first to get these playable demos, you may do so via his Patreon. Or if you just want to keep up to date and follow every preview, you may do so via his Discord or his Reddit, all of which will be linked down in the video description down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all probably next month in the next release. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Cheers.